Good afternoon. Civil Society in Action, European and Polish Perspective. Welcome the participants of the 32nd Council of the European Green Party and all the green-thinking people in Poland and the other European countries who are watching us. At this conference, organized by the Green European Foundation and Strefa Zieleni Foundation that I represent, we want to present and discuss some selected Polish, international and especially European challenges through the lens of Polish coalitions and platforms of cooperation and activism that we as Green Foundation are part of. In a country like Poland, where civil society was fragmented and poorly organized, and progressive, especially pro-ecological organizations and movements had no support in mainstream political ideologies, a Green Foundation has a special duty to support all efforts to strengthen civic movements defending progressive green values and the future of our children and grandchildren. We selected some pressing issues in Polish society connected to European and global challenges. Urban policies, rivers protection, youth activism, food and agriculture policy, and protection of civil rights, especially women's rights. We thank the Congress of Urban Movements, the Save the Rivers Coalition, the Living Earth Coalition, and the Congress of Women for accepting our invitation and agreeing to be partners of this event. Our panels are short, so we will have no time to answer directly to your questions, but don't hesitate to write them in comments. So our guests and other experts or activists will discuss with you and will answer to your questions. Once more, welcome, and let's start the first panel. As we all know, at that moment, the biggest part of the population in Europe lives in cities. Cities concentrate a great human capital of people with very diverse education, interests, and talents. Therefore, cities must be at the forefront of tackling the challenges of our world, including climate change, making good use of these precious resources. In the European Union, cities must be leaders of implementation of the European Green Deal that the European Commission launched in December 2019 as a multi-sectoral, complex and ambitious strategy of transition to make the European Union net carbon neutral by 2050. But the COVID pandemic has come and has turned the world on its head. To speak about the challenges that must face today our cities and how they can do it, we invited Evelyn Heutebrück, co-chair of the European Green Party and former Minister of Environment and Energy in the Brussels Capital Region, former co-chair of the French-speaking Belgian Green Party Ecolo. Evelyn? The second speaker is Marta Bejnarowicz, local councillor in the city of Gorzów Wielkopolski, the president of the Congress of Urban Movements, partner of this panel. Welcome, Marta. Dzień dobry. We have also Miłosława, or Miłka, Stępień, leader of local urban organization Akcja Konin, organization that is member of the Congress of Urban Movements. Miłka is an active and important green activist. Cathy van de Velde, the last speaker, she is project officer at Green Belgian Flemish organization Oikos think tank and coordinator of the GEF project Cities as a Place of Hope. Evelyn, I would like to start with you. As experienced green politician and also as co-chair of the European Green Party, could you draw up the picture of the green perspective on what is the role of cities in today's complex situation? What should be the first priorities of local governments and of urban activists in the coming years? You have 6-7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Eva. I hope you hear me. Thank also all the movement there for inviting me. You know that I was always, and I am always very involved in green cities, in local councillor, in the local and the regional level, because I'm really convinced that if it's at the local level that we meet a lot of climate problems, it's also there that we can find and propose the solution. And so there is a crucial role for the city, because why? And we saw it during the pandemic. We are at the front line. It's also work day by day in contact with the people, and we have also to prove a lot of empathy with the people. And it's really the level where you can transform the cities. I can I can see in my municipality, where I am always local councillor, we have a green mayor, we have 4 vice mayor, and it's on the question of mobility, of energy, of sustainable food, on urban planning that we can act. But we cannot do it without the participation of the civil society and the participation of the citizens, and that's not always easy. We can see here in Brussels, for example. The question of mobility is a very difficult question. And sometimes it puts some citizens who use a car against the other, who are pedestrian or who use the cycle. And that's also the rule of the Greens. It's to make this participation, and that's really a difficult task. The priorities, I think, also for the local council, for the cities, is also to find partners in the other cities, and that's one of the priority of European Green Party, and certainly for 2021, is to make this sharing of initiatives, sharing of climate plan, sharing maybe also of problems. And for the moment, we have seen that we have more and more mayors everywhere in Europe. Let's see, in France, for example, 10 big cities have a green mayor. We see it in Belgium. We have seen it also recently in Germany. And I'm sure that also we will have it in Poland, in the east part and in the south part of Europe. That's one of our priority. A priority for the cities is also to be partner in the international negotiation. And we will have the COP in 1 year. Normally it was now, this week, in Glasgow, but because of the pandemic, it will be in 1 year. And it's not enough that it's not only a negotiation between national government, it must be also a negotiation with the city. A second priority is to reinforce and support the network of cities. I said it to you, I was vice president of Energy Cities and also of ICLEI. It's very important that our local councillor or mayor are speaking together and sharing their priorities and their initiatives. A third thing, probably necessary, is that the cities can receive also direct financement from the EU, from Europe. You know that it is a demand from the 4 cities from Visegrad who ask that also, and it's certainly necessary in a country like Hungary, like Poland, where there are many problems also on the national level. But financement is not enough for a city. Because you have finance, but you don't have technician, you don't have administration, you then have support from experts, you cannot act in your city. So you need also to have some support. For the moment, we try to share also the initiative between our cities where we have the Greens. I spoke with you about the 10 cities in France, but we have also Oslo, we have Helsinki, we have Ghent, we have Brussels, Barcelona, or Valencia. So it's important that all together, and that's one of the priority, we will have a platform with the European Green Party, with all these local councillors and all these mayors. That's one of the priority. And one biggest topic probably for the cities, I underline it, it's the mobility. Because mobility, it's everything. Mobility, it's urban planning. Mobility, it's a question of environment. Mobility is also the social question, or you are living in a city. So I think that we have to focus absolutely on the mobility. I shall stop here, but be sure that we want to make a priority also to the East and to work with you. I see you virtually. I prefer to be with you in Warsaw. I hope I can come in the next month. And I'm sure that we can do a lot of work with you in Warsaw, but also in other big cities in Poland. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Evelyn, for this wonderful news. This platform of the European Greens connecting cities together is a great news for not only for the Green family, but for all the others that will be able to react and cooperate with this network. So at this moment, I would like to introduce Marta Bejnar-Bejnarowicz, who is the president of the Federation Congress of Urban Movements. Marta will speak in Polish. In many cities in Poland, organizations are emerging, which we call urban movements. Some of them formed a federation, the Congress of Urban Movements. And Greens are very present in the Congress and support it, as they share the same vision of the city. Beata Nowak, the editor-in-chief of the Green magazine Zielone Wiadomości, is one of founding members of the Congress. Lech Mergler, one of pillars and the first president of the Federation, is a former Green activist. Our Green Foundation Strefa Zieleni is, of course, a member organization. And Miłka Stępień, who will be the next speaker, who is an important person in the Green Party, she is at the same time leader of local urban organization Akcja Konin, which is a member organization of the Congress. So to understand why the Congress of Urban Movement is so important for the Green family in Poland, I would like to ask Marta Bejnarowicz, its president, to present the organization and the main challenges faced by the Polish cities today. Marta, I give you the floor. Marto, bardzo proszę.
Dzień dobry, Marta. Hello everyone. My name is Marta Bejnar-Bejnarowicz. I have a presentation. However, I'm not sure if you can see it. So can I show you the next slides? Can I just click it on my screen? How can we tackle this from a technical point of view?
Dobrze, to ja...
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, you can click yourself and you'll be moving to the next slide. Well, I cannot see the presentation, but let's try doing this way. So let me explain how the Congress started. We started in 2011. Oh, now I can see my presentation. This is good. So we started in 2011. We started as an informal group of urban activists taking action in big cities. That was the beginning, but right now we are active in smaller cities and towns as well. We've been an official non-government organization and since 2017, and in 2020 I can say that we have over 40 organizations which are members of our Congress. And what is our common vision vision.
16 tez o
We
mieście,
have
które
16
odnoszą się do prawa do miasta,
or thesis, 16 beliefs as to what cities should be like, and we believe we should stress the importance of participation, so people who live in cities should co-decide about how the urban planning is implemented, what the city looks like, and how cities can adjust to the climate change. What are our challenges for now?
To jest przede wszystkim
I think we are facing the following challenges. I think there is a lot of mistrust, social mistrust, and we are trying to deal with it. We want to make the process, the decision-making process, more inclusive, so that people who live in cities can actually co-decide about what is going on in their city. And that's why some of our urban movements are also involved in politics, and there are many activists who are members of the Congress of Urban Movements, but at the same time there are also members of the city councils or even mayors. We want to promote respecting the common good, so that the priority is our common good and not private property with regard to public spaces. Also, we want to inform, we want to advise. We want to provide people with information, we want to have impact on the education that people who live in cities are provided with. We want to increase the self-awareness in terms of the urban management, and also we want to promote communication in education. So broad education for people who live in cities and towns. And also I think that the public debate has a very low quality, unfortunately, and especially last year we had a new challenge. It is not included in my presentation, but this is something we are all experiencing. So how resilient cities are when there is a crisis. It's a variety of crises that are related to the climate, for example, or public health, like the pandemic right now. So our activities are related to some particular areas, the citizens, and how they are active, and how we can promote that. According to our goals, we understand urban democracy not just as participation in elections, but we also want people who live in cities to be involved in the decision-making process on an ongoing basis, and they should be encouraged to be active in that area. So it's not just about casting a vote every 4 years. People who live in cities should be treated as subjects rather than objects of the urban management, and they should be involved in the decision-making process on an ongoing basis. Now, urban planning, in terms of architecture, we rely on education, so we present different forms that can be used by the mayors to get people involved in urban planning, and we also share good practices. You can find a lot of information on this on our website of the Congress of Urban Movements. So that's our platform where we share our ideas, our concepts, and we also publish different articles, different texts. And if you read them, you can learn about our vision of a sustainable city. Also, we are active in the area of consulting local specialists, local experts. So we want to promote consultations in the area of urban planning, irrespective of whether it's just optional consultation or obligatory consultation. We want to promote that, and we want to get the local experts involved, but also we want to get the local community involved. So we are very active. We participate participate in all those processes. Also, participation budgets. This is something we've been promoting as well. There was a significant change last year because the law was amended, and right now it is obligatory to have a voting system for this budget. However, there are many towns which introduce this concept of deliberative decision-making. So people just met together and decided on the priorities in terms of investments, finance from that budget. We also educate people with regard to taking common positions or getting involved in the urban management. We also want to have some impact on the central administration. We are trying to introduce new ideas within the public debate, and we are very, very active in the area of revitalization in over 20 cities and towns. We have projects on that, and we always take an individual approach, which is adjusted to the particular town or city. But also on the central level, we are active in that area as an umbrella organization, so we want to have some impact on the national central policy in that area. And there was an idea that a ministry of towns and cities should be established. That idea has not been implemented yet. However, this may still be the case in the future. And what are our recommendations? As you can see on my slide in the presentation, we want to promote being patient, we want to promote trust. We are building support networks for urban activists, but also for non-governmental organizations which are active in cities and towns, irrespective of whether they are members of our umbrella organization or not. We are trying to support them, so we want to be that umbrella under which they can come to receive support and protection. We are also active within the public debate, and we are introducing topics which were not present in the public debate 5 or 6 years ago, or they were not taken seriously. And during the last campaign before the elections, all the politicians running addressed those issues, irrespective of which part of the political spectrum they represented. So that we've been really successful in this, I think. Also, there is interdisciplinary cooperation and multi-sectoral cooperation on the national level and on the local level. We are able to organize different workshops to support the local activists, urban activists. We want to share good practices, we want to share knowledge on how to get involved in the decision-making process in a city or in a town. And also, we provide different comments and we take positions whenever decisions are being made with regard to national laws. Thank you. Thank you a lot for your presentation. Indeed, I hope that our audience have been able to understand the important role played by the Congress of Urban Movements in Poland. We wish you all the best, and we hope that you'll be able to use the green platform of cities active all over Europe. Just let me add one thing. I am really happy with our participation with the Greens, not just the party, but also different green activists, because it is clear that it's one of the biggest challenges for the cities to adjust to the climate change and the consequences of the climate crisis. So we cannot really cope with that challenge if we do not work together. So, okay, and now Mirosława Stępień, you manage the organization Akcja Konin. This is also one one of the member organizations of the Congress of Urban Movements.
Why your urban local organization in Konin joined the Congress of Urban Movements, and what specific challenges your organization must deal with in Konin?
I'm sorry, I needed to turn on my microphone. It's good to hear you all, and thank you for inviting me. So today I'll be talking about a little bit about Akcja Konin and what we do. We joined the Congress of Urban Movements about 2 years ago. Since then, well, this is an organization that has been functioning for about 10 years. And we've focused mostly on a lot of the things that the Congress of Urban Movements promotes. So this is, among other things, local participation and influence on decision making. We did a lot of work on development and local development. This was in our early years where we, for example, prepared the first civic or citizen-based strategy for the development of the region, which unfortunately was never implemented because there was no interest at that time. But what has happened in recent years is that a lot of the ideas that we came to the floor with 10 years ago have started to be implemented and have started to gain recognition. So I can say that both issues that were brought up first by the Congress of Urban Movements and also by the Greens in Poland and throughout Europe are now finally finding a platform in which they can be heard and in which they can be implemented. After those first years, what we've been doing in recent years is, because this is a coal region, this is a lignite coal region where I live. So more specifically, we've been focusing on phasing out coal and on the issue of the just transition of the region, which is very much connected with climate change. And since this is a lignite mining region, it's also very strongly connected to issues of water, because we've had huge losses of water in this region. One of the very important aspects that we have had to bring up in recent years is the issue of mitigation and adaptation to climate change. We've also had specific achievements in this field because 2 years ago, we started talking to the local government about introducing a specific plan of adapting and mitigating climate change. And through our cooperation with the local government and with the local administration, in recent years, there has been more movement, and right now Konin has quite a sensible, reasonable plan of climate adaptation and climate mitigation. There is also a very specific developed plan to deal with the development of the green and blue infrastructure, so the development of parks and lakes and taking care of the river that runs through our city. So this shows that, and a lot of the knowledge that we were able to use for getting these things across was the knowledge that we could get through our contacts, through the networking, and through the workshops that we had within such structures like the Congress of Urban Movements. Such networks, because we are actually a part of a couple of such networks. One of them deals with urban movements. Another one deals with issues connected to phasing out coal. In both these movements, which are nationwide movements, we are moving forward through cooperation, through exchanging information, through developing contact with experts. Another thing that I would also like to stress is that our region is planning to achieve climate neutrality in 2040. We already have a plan in place that will probably be confirmed officially by the end of the year or at the beginning of next year. So one thing that we should note is that even if the national government in countries like Poland are not on board fully, in terms of what they want of achieving climate goals, the situation is completely different in regions like mine, which must be supported because such regions it's a little bit like the United States, where the national government might not have been setting or fulfilling the Paris Paris Agreement goals. The same as in Poland, we might not be achieving that on the national level, but there are already regions here, and ours is a specific example of that have a specific plan to achieve climate neutrality. And I think that's the greatest achievement that we've had here locally. And I think that's what I'd like to end with, because I think it's a good positive note that we can finish with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miłka. And in the Congress of Urban Movement, we have also another organization in Silesia, in another coal region, and you cooperate with each other. So lignite region with black coal region. So also the just transition is one of important topic of the Congress of Urban Movements. Cathy van de Velde, for the Green European Foundation, cities as a place of permanent change are one of priority topics, and the Oikos think tank is a leading organization to explore it. Ghent, where Oikos is based, is a real laboratory for the governance of the city as a commons. And the commons as a tool of transforming the city was for a few years an object of GEF studies, and you were a part of this. What is the project that you are coordinating now about? What Polish local governments and urban activists could learn from this project? Cathy van de Velde, please.
Thank you, Eva, for the aim of our cities is to highlight transformative urban strategies in the European Union and to present another vision on the EU. So we all share this logic and dominant vision on the EU as a cooperation between member states with its successes and its difficulties. Wait, somebody's handling the presentation other than me, or? Okay, sorry. So the European Union is currently facing huge challenges. We know it. It has its successes, but also its difficulties. The public and the political debate is dominated by migration, climate change, fair and healthy food, sustainable mobility, etc. And we also see nation states turning away from the Union and becoming more protectionist. They consider isolation more as an answer to challenges than cooperation. Look at Brexit, for example. Also, the EU has a strong focus on economy and the free market, but its social and environmental agenda is still insufficient. But on the other hand, as you can see on the slide here, the EU also has a rich landscape of progressive cities developing transformative projects and policies for food, mobility, agriculture, energy, circular economy, you name it. And there appears to be a clear difference between national governance and local governance. On a national level, some governments, for instance, invest in the automobile industry. They build more motorways to be able to accommodate more cars, while many cities are currently actually investing in the mobility of tomorrow, making streets and city centers car-free, like the city of Ghent does in Belgium. Also, on EU level, policies are not always in line with the local level. With the common agricultural policy, the EU sticks to industrial agribusiness instead of sustainable urban food policies. So it finances large-scale industrial agriculture rather than local small-scale food initiatives. But on the other hand, in Milan, for instance, they have an urban food policy pact that works to develop sustainable food systems that are inclusive and resilient. And so, like Evelien Uitenbroek already mentioned, besides these progressive cities, there is also a growing number of city networks like fearless cities and energy cities, which are proving their worth. Now, there are three important domains, I think, where cities can make a big difference. It's democracy, economy, and climate. Democracy today is not able to solve some contemporary issues, for instance, the yellow vests versus President Macron in France, or the tension between Chancellor Angela Merkel and East Germany, or the global youth and adults going on strike for the climate. So we'll need to reinvent democracy. And this is where municipalism comes into play. So municipalism is the self-governance and the participatory governance of cities. And because municipalism helps mobilize citizens to participate deeply in local problem solving, so the citizen becomes actually a partner against neoliberal deregulation. Now, when it comes to economy, the current economic system fails, as became clear after the financial crisis in 2009. The global market improved the life of some at the expense of the quality of life of many others. So more and more people advocate for an alternative economic system, one where increasing the common good for everyone becomes more important than profit for a small group. For this, more and more citizens are taking matters into their own hands by setting up these citizen collectives, commons as we call them, to create alternatives based on the needs of society instead of private gain. And in these commons, people work together to produce or manage what they find valuable and want to take care of on the basis of their own self-determined rules. And Catalonia in Spain is an interesting example of an open source commons-based economy. They have this cooperative logic that is locally embedded, yet at the same time they share their knowledge, expertise, and technology worldwide. Now, when it comes to climate, we have the climate adaptive cities. Their focus is not only on lowering CO2 emissions, but also on dealing with changes that are occurring already today in cities. Like the example that I show you here of Nørrebro in Copenhagen. In 2018, the city of Copenhagen launched the Climate Adaptation Project, which aims to regenerate the city's Nørrebro area by establishing new ecosystems to ease flooding, and at the same time by creating new social spaces. So this is a beautiful example of social and climate adaptive objectives brought together in a city with involvement of local citizens and local traders. And yeah, also in Belgium, we have some great examples, and I already mentioned Ghent. It successfully enrolled an ambitious mobility plan to give the city back to its citizens instead of cars. There is no time to enter in detail here, but the Ghent Mobility Plan and countless other transformative policies in cities worldwide show that bold policies aiming at social ecological transformation really can provide a significant answer to various challenges in terms of livability. So if anyone here knows any other beautiful examples of transformative cities, I'm all ears. Please do not hesitate to share them with me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kati. Thanks all our wonderful women panelists. I'm particularly glad to have this first panel, completely female panel. So speaking about the cities, and we know how important is the role of women in all this transition. To finish, I would like just to ask you one question, because we are speaking about urban movements, about all kinds of organizations, and also about political movements. My question is just 1 minute for each of you. In some cities, like in Barcelona, but also in many others, progressive parties like Greens and certain left parties make coalition with urban movements and other organizations to transform together their city. To take power in the city and to change it, to change the model of governance. Is this for you a desirable model for a successful transition? Is it realistic to try to build such electoral coalitions? Marta, what do you think about it? Marto, nie słyszymy cię.
Marta, we can't hear you.
O, może teraz, bo ktoś miał
Maybe you can hear me now. I was muted.
Przy tak dużych wyzwaniach,
Well, with such big challenges as climate changes and the necessity to adapt cities to climate changes, I think we need to have a very broad coalition, regardless of views that one has related to ideologies or world view or any other area of life in the city. Now, as regards the challenges that are the basic urban challenges today, I think every coalition is positive. Miłka.
What is your opinion?
I think it's absolutely necessary because we're at such a point that it's difficult to achieve the really fast and complicated changes that are necessary at this point in our lives, at this point in history, without establishing very broad cooperation with different movements, sometimes even movements with which we do not agree in certain aspects. So working, for example, here in a region where we have a huge issue with how the future of this region should be structured, how we should deal with the challenges of lack of water, how we should deal with a complete change of the economy, what you find is that you sit down at the table with a large variety of different people. This means that we build coalitions for specific purposes. We build coalitions to achieve specific goals. And in other areas, we might not be able to cooperate. But those specific goals are something that you can make happen together. In terms of politically, this is, of course, always a bit more difficult. But I think that activists have to get more involved in politics. And very often they need political support and cooperation in order to introduce the specific ideas that they have into to sort of have it translated into specific legal terms, specific acts, and specific political decisions.
Thank you.
So this means that it's absolutely necessary for us to enter into various types of coalitions also for election purposes.
Thank you very much, Miłka. Kati, what is your opinion? Kati, what is your opinion on the topic about coalitions between movements and parties to transform cities?
I absolutely totally agree. By mobilizing urban movements and citizens, you create support and deep participation, which can help to push things forward in a good direction. And like I mentioned before, citizens and urban movements can be great partners against neoliberal deregulation. So I totally agree with you.
Thank you. And Evelyn, the last word is for you for this panel.
Is it me, Eva?
Yes. Evelyn, yes,
I didn't hear you. Okay. No, of course, where you can make a progressive coalition, you have to do it. There is a question of coalition with other party, progressive party. Of course, we need it. And here in Belgium or in our cities, we are in coalition with some progressive party. The error of some other progressive parties is to oppose too often the social question to the environment and climate question. And we Greens, that the first victims of climate change and the pollution are the more poor and weak of our population. And that's the concept of climate emergency. It's a global project, environmental, economic, and social. And then the coalition, of course, with the civil society, it's what we do, which we try to do, with NGOs, with associations also, but also with all the public opinion. And here, for example, in Brussels, we try to do it to share that with the population. But be careful, because it's also I don't like to say the citizens, because we can see also in our municipality that, of course, the citizens are not always agree with each other on the question, for example, on mobility. And their pedagogic empathy, you need to have it absolutely, and to take time also with the citizen to explain what you want, to explain your project, to explain also the evolution and your agenda. But of course, the more large progressive you can do, we have to do, because there is really a climate emergency today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this wonderful panel. The next one, so now we will have a short break, and we will meet again at 5 to 4 o'clock for a panel with river activists. Thank you very much. Short break. Society in Action. Welcome to our second panel of the seminar Civil Society in Action. This one will be dedicated to river. Let's save rivers. I would start with a short presentation to show you very subjective presentation of why we as a Green Foundation, we are working so much with rivers and working on this topic. So everything started a few years ago with a seminar, GEF seminar, Water Common Good at Risk, when the activist of WWF Poland, Przemysław Nawrocki, who is working on rivers for years already, told us that between 2007 and 2015, about 20,000 kilometers of rivers, of small and middle-sized rivers in Poland, have been modernized like this, like you see on the picture, in Poland, using European funds. It was so terrible information that we started to think what we can do about it together. And at the next Green Summer Academy in Poland in July 2016, so it was GEF Green Summer School, we invited a lot of activists, as many as we could, of river activists that were people who were working on rivers for a long time already, but each organization a little bit separately. And we organized, on the right you see the seminar, where we are looking for what we can do together, how we can organize ourselves together to create a coalition. At the same Green Summer Academy, on the left, you see there was a public debate with Rebecca Harms, who was the co-chair of the Green Group in the European Parliament at this moment. And on the right, the person on the right is Przemek Nawrocki, who was the person who initiated all this green work on rivers. And this public debate was dedicated to the project of building a new dam in this region. And of course, to make our green activists feel the topic, to understand how important it is, we invited our colleague, local councillor from Toruń, who is the person with a green jacket on the boat, and he has a small company of ecotourism, and he showed us with the better ornithologist we could the river and how wonderful the Vistula River is. So, but we didn't, so a few months ago, Koalicja Ratujmy Rzeki, Save the Rivers coalition was formed, and so we gave this first push for the coalition to become reality. And after, at each Green Summer School, we had something about rivers. So you see here some activists present, and at 2018 Green Summer School, we helped to organize inside the Green Summer School the first river university with all the river activists. And on the bottom picture, you see the happening River Sisters with Cecilia Malik, that will be one of our speakers today. So at the last Green Summer University in 2019, we made a big jump. It's in the Oder River. It's action that is supported very strongly, led by Klub Gaia of Jacek Bożek, who is one of speakers today also. And with Cecilia Malik, because we are partner of Congress of Women, who will be the last panel today, for the Congress of Women, we invited all the women participating in a Congress in September 2019 to become Sisters Rivers, and it's the photo of all the participants as Sisters Rivers to inform and show how important rivers are. Finally, at our last Green Days in Sokołowsko in August this year, when we could meet in person, in reality, we had 2 panels about water and about activism and water and rivers activism. So you see the topic is very important. And it's not only because of this destruction of rivers that was done already, but also because of governmental projects. So thank you very much for this for your attention, and now I would like to introduce our panelist of today. I don't know if Jacek Bożek is already with us. If we could have a connection. Can I have an information, because I don't see the panelists yet. I don't know who of the panelists is already here. I don't see Jacek yet. Okay. So I see Radek Gawlik. So now we will continue in Polish. Radosław Gawlik.
Radosław Gawlik, he is a member, who is also a founder of the Green Party. He was a member of the Polish Parliament for 4 legislation periods. He worked also for the Ministry of the Environment, and now he's the helmsman of the coalition Let's Save the Rivers. We also have Izabela Zygmunt, who used to be a member of the Green Party, and she was also a coordinator at the Polish Green Network, and she's also a health woman of the coalition Let's Save the Rivers. We also have Cecilia Malik with us. She's an activist, an artist, a performer, and she founded this movement, Sisters of the Rivers, and she's a member of the Green Party, and she is also an activist within the coalition Let's Save the Rivers. We also have Artur Furdyna. He is an environmentalist. He specializes in fish research, and he is also a member of the Association Friends of Rivers, and he is also active in the coalition Let's Save the Rivers. And I also hope that Jacek Bożek will join us. He's not just a member and a founder of the Green Party, but he was also one of the first co-presidents of the party. He's also a member of the Gaia Club and the helmsman of the coalition Let's Save the Rivers. So let's start with challenges. Isa, let's start with you, if you don't mind. What's the biggest threat for the Polish rivers right now, and how do you want to protect the Polish rivers, and also how is it related to the European Green Deal? Voice over to you. And I should speak Polish. Yes, you should speak Polish. Okay. So, hello, good afternoon. The biggest challenge for the Polish rivers is a very common belief of the decision makers, who believe that a river in its natural condition is actually a threat that should be tackled with. Those experts or those decision makers believe that rivers need to be regulated, and we've heard such comments from people who manage the rivers in Poland, and they referred to rivers as wild rivers, and that was something bad for them. And we see it in a completely different way. For us, a wild river is a good river. For them, it's the other way around. And now, in the context of the European Green Deal, I think we need a breakthrough. Something needs to change, and we should focus more on nature-based solutions. However, this is not yet the case, because the politicians, the decision makers, still believe that rivers are more of some kind of infrastructure than pure nature. So they want to regulate rivers, they want to control the Polish rivers, and it's very difficult to approach them, to reach them with our arguments regarding also how people can be protected from droughts and floods. They believe that concrete is the best solution, but this is not true. And also, there is one more topic which is very important, the plans of our government to transform the Polish big rivers, Oder and Vistula, into big international waterways. That's the plan of the Polish government. So they want those big rivers to become canals, actually. Radek, what's the biggest threat for the Oder River, a river that Poland shares with the Czech Republic and Germany? And how do you want to protect this river from that threat? Well, I've got a detailed presentation regarding this issue. However, I believe that I can just give you a gist of that presentation. I will give you just the most important information. As Isa was saying, we have a problem with the approach. The common approach of the decision makers is that rivers should be regulated, should be straightened, they want there to be no trees around those rivers, they want to have embankments there, and this is actually some kind of devastation of the nature around the river. And actually the threat of floods is increased and not decreased. And 20,000 kilometers of rivers that were destroyed between 2010 and 2015, it's a disaster, and it cost 1.7 billion euros, and we expected the European Union to take action, and we thought that there would be consequences, serious consequences for the Polish government. However, there were none. The European Union did nothing, even though these EU funds were spent on such ineffective activities. And the situation is as follows. Please take a look at the picture. This is a picture which has been taken this year. It's the region of Podkarpacie. There were some protected species there, so it was an important habitat of some protected species, and it was all destroyed because of the activities that were carried out there, even though we advised otherwise. So it was really a big tragedy for that area, which is also an area protected under the Natura 2000 program. And now the Oder River, I think those people are just members of this hydro concrete lobby, and they want to get as much money as possible. It's really grotesque. I think it's a fraud of public officers, and it's the taxpayer that is paying for all that at the end of the day. So just to describe it in a short way, there is an agreement signed with the World Bank. It was signed in 2015. It's about this German-Polish border. The aim is to regulate the Oder River in that region so that icebreakers can operate there to protect people from floods. So they were just afraid of floods, and they wanted to solve this problem in some way, and they came up with this idea to have 2 icebreakers, and they built these 2 icebreakers. However, they are just too big, and they are submerged much deeper than they should be, and that's why so much money needs to be spent now on dredging the Oder River so that it's deeper and so that these 2 icebreakers can operate there. And also these 2 icebreakers were named after these 2 officials making this decision, which is also grotesque in my opinion. And my presentation is in Polish. I'm not sure whether you can see my presentation. So what's the role of the European Union in that process? I think the European Union has nothing to be proud of, because $210 million were provided by the European Union in funds to support that investment, and that investment doesn't make any sense. It does not protect people from floods, and it destroys the environment, the nature around that region, which is protected under Natura 2000 program. And the threat of floods is actually increased and not decreased, and also there is no economic benefit for the region. And let me tell you that there are absolutely no goods transported on the Oder River. I took a trip there in summer for some days, and we didn't see any boats carrying goods. And I think that these officials provided wrong information, and I think this is a fraud, because they explained that the project would protect people from floods, but it's just not true. This is not the reality. And actually, they even admit that they wanted to make the river a waterway to transport goods. But this is not happening. So this economic benefit is actually not taking place. So we took action in June 2016. There was a protest in front of the building of the World Bank in Warsaw, in the center of Warsaw. So it was a big protest, and there were a lot of green activists there. And many people were able to learn that all this project is actually a fraud, even people who do not have any expert knowledge. Also, we lodged a complaint with the European Commission, and we explained how these funds provided by the European Commission were spent on this project. That doesn't make any sense at all. We tried to intervene with the World Bank, but nothing really happened, and we also sent a petition to Ursula von der Leyen. It's a petition that is available in German and in Polish and in English, so I encourage you to sign it if you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think the following fact deserves our attention. The Minister of Waterways boasted in an interview that he was able to mislead the World Bank and obtain funds for an anti-flood project, even though the real objective was to regulate the Oder River. And now it's hard to stop the project. Once the project was launched, it's difficult to stop it. So that's why we need your support and your signatures en masse. Cecilia Malik. Cecilio, you're an artist, a painter, and you're an environmental activist, and you do it through your art. For quite some time now, for a few years actually, you've been fighting for rivers within the framework of a coalition, Let's Save Rivers. And could you tell us how you, as an artist, activist, how have you been fighting to save rivers? Well, I come from Krakow. I live in Krakow at the Vistula River, and an ornithologist, Kazimierz Balasz, would take me to walk along the river. It was 7 years ago, and he showed me that concrete bottom was worse than anything else than plastic in the rivers. And he said that now the European Union is sponsoring it, is funding it. We're damaging rivers, and the general public doesn't care. Poles know that it's not so good to cut trees. They know a little bit about smog, but as regards the protection of rivers, they have no idea. So Then I found out that there was this idea of dredging and of dredging my favorite river, Białka, in the mountains. And I organized the first beautiful protest in order to defend that river from being regulated. And I encouraged artists, friends, citizens of Krakow to make a plea, to make plead from material, so we were able to do that. And we experienced, or we saw that art can become an agora, a space that helps us to talk to the journalists, the local community, politicians and activists. So we made a plate made of material like you do on hair. So the pictures that I saw were horrible, and I decided I do not agree that this happens. This is the Białka River, where we organized the first protest. And this is where I got to know the first sternman of the coalition, Let's Save Rivers, Gaja, Jacek Bożek, Professor Roman Żurek. And now we are working with them. But back in 2016, things became really difficult. Our new government, Law and Justice, decided that small local businesses are not enough. It's not enough to destroy small rivers. They decided to turn big rivers into transport rivers and build dams on the river Vistula and other planned back in the 60s under the communist rule. And this is when Let's Save Rivers coalition was established. And so ecological organizations decided to join forces. And I came up with an artistic happening. I invited women to choose their favorite rivers and give them the voice. And sisters of the Vistula River came to save it, to say out loud that we do not agree that rivers are devastated, big, last natural rivers of Europe, our common asset. We do not agree to that in the times of climate changes. Unfortunately, those happenings were not presented by the media, were not shown by the media, because the media in Poland stopped showing topics that are not comfortable for the government. And the opposition media simply didn't understand the topic of rivers. So a year later, we managed to organize a more effective campaign. We decided to present the topic of rivers in fashion magazines. We organized boat trip along the Vistula River for women. We showed them different topics around the rivers. We made some uniforms by hand, manually, and in big cities all over Poland, instead of organizing protests, we organized fashion shows. During that period, we were also distributing leaflets prepared by Green Mind. And the leaflets presented knowledge about the Vistula River, how natural rivers benefit the general public, for example, by supplying fresh water and self-cleaning properties. So our joint event, organized together with WWF and Green Mind, and we visited the Ministry for Water Management and Inland Waterways. We presented them this appeal for the protection of rivers, and we submitted this appeal. Our most recent campaign and action that we've launched, a very difficult one, because the topic in general is really difficult, is a protest against a big dam that the local politicians want to build in Beskid Niski in the south of Poland. This is our visit at the ministry. So at the beginning of this year, Cecilia, you need to accelerate. At the beginning of this year, local politicians started their efforts to obtain some funds from the World Bank to get support for the development of a dam and to flood this valley. People were supposed to be resettled. A church, a cemetery was supposed to be flooded. A whole village was supposed to be eroded. The project of the dam was established back in the 60s. Cecilia, you have 1 minute. There were no public consultations. We organized a protest, but because of the pandemic, we couldn't involve people. So to protest against the dam, we invited some cows, which were grazing on beautiful pastures in the valley at the river. They had those big banners, "Leave our pastures alone. We want our pastures and we want meadows, not the dam. We feel so good here, we're staying." Thank you so much. Cecilia, thank you very much. I wish you every success, because your success is the success of our rivers and the success of future generations. So we have Jacek Bożek with us now. Jacek Bożek, like I said, he's a founding member of the Green Party and its first co-chair. Today he's a church of Gaia Club and the chairman of Let's Save Rivers Coalition. So he's been fighting for rivers. You've been a river activist for a long time now. You've been observing how the world, Europe and Poland has been changing. In your opinion, what should we do today for the rivers and actually for ourselves and the future generations? Hello, everyone. It's so nice to listen to the voice of activists. Today, we are talking about rivers. Rivers mean flow. But in my opinion, and this is the title of my small presentation, the question to us all is, how do you manage something that's irreversible? Things going on around us cannot be reversed. They are irreversible processes. So my friends and myself have been active in this area. Starting from 1990s, I've been trying to make sure that no single dam can be built on the Vistula River. And we made sure that 2 dams were blocked. In spite of all those measures, as you will see, the world has not been changing as we would like it to. So how do you manage something that's unavoidable? I think what we can do together, the Greens in Poland, the Greens in Europe, and NGOs, as civic organizations. We need to look for good practices and present them, but not only in Brussels or Warsaw. We have to go lower to the level of municipalities to show that we can manage those things that are irreversible. We need to start showing all those young movements that politics is extremely important and a lot depends on it. And such universities as you've been organizing, Eva, should be addressed not only at young people, but also at heads of municipalities, heads of counties, because they have this local approach and they need to get concrete examples showing that what we do is in line with what they and their community wants. So if possible, if there is enough will, enough energy and money, we could start creating, as Greens and NGOs, those clusters, if you will, economic, environmental, social clusters, because it's all about changing culture. We're still acting in a very fragmented way. And great that we are able to save some forests, rivers, or animals. But the situation is really dire. But without any concrete examples, it's going to be hard for us to translate it into this local level. So my suggestion for the Greens is, let's sit down together, let's find the methods that will build bridges between what's old and what's new and what's coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very clever suggestions indeed. We will give it some more thoughts after our conference. So we will discuss this topic again, this topic of what further steps should be made now. And now voice over to Artur Furdyna. Artur, you are trying to repair rivers that have been destroyed. Could you please tell us how this is possible?
Dobry wieczór.
Good afternoon. Well,
ja miałem to szczęście
I was very lucky
20 lat temu,
because some 20 years ago
że spotkałem
I met
większość z dzisiejszych panelistów
most of the panelists that we have today.
Porozmawiać o rzekach.
And we were able to talk about rivers
Dziś
such a long time ago.
my musimy
And nowadays
do źródeł
we
problemu.
have to go back to
Nie jestem aż
address
takim
the
pesymistą jak
sources
Jacek.
of the problem. I am not as pessimistic as
Wciąż
Jacek
uważam,
is.
że
I still believe
jeszcze
that
5 sekund mamy do
we
opamiętania.
have some time, like 5 seconds to come to our senses. However, we
tylko o rzekach.
have to stop thinking just about the
musimy
rivers,
zrozumieć,
and we
że
need to
zlewnia
understand
jest kluczem do rozwiązania problemu.
that the key solution of the problem is the whole catchment area, not just the river itself. And because of that, it is so important to remember what Jacek said. These cluster areas have been designated by the nature itself, and such a cluster is the catchment area of every river. So we need to extend our green message to stress that we want to fix not just the rivers themselves, but also the whole catchment areas, not just for the fish, but also for people, for us. This is the key issue. We need to address the problem at its roots. If we don't do this, we'll lose. And the current picture of our rivers is the result of decades, of centuries of changes
osiągnęły niezwykle tempo po
which
pojawieniu się unijnych dofinansowań.
were actually even more comprehensive and even faster when Poland started receiving EU funds. So the EU funds accelerated these changes of the rivers. So that's the only way of fixing the problem, of solving the problem. And I must say that I have met so many open and friendly people who are happy to learn about all those problems. And these were NGOs members or people who just like spending their time on the river bank, people who like fishing, and also technicians, hydro technicians, and members of the local government. So there are a lot of people who are willing to talk to us. However, there is actually not enough understanding on the side of the politicians, and we need to change that before the nature changes that itself. Because the coalition Żywa Ziemia, Living Earth, says that we only learn to respect water when there is a shortage of it. So hopefully there will be no shortage of water that will make us understand the problem. We will manage to understand it sooner. Thank you, Arthur, for these clever words. And some countries, there are councils of stakeholders on the catchment area levels, and maybe we could implement a similar solution in Poland. But as you are saying, the knowledge that people have is crucial, and we need to get that knowledge across to political parties, not just the Green Party, not just the Green movement, because the Green activists already have that awareness and that knowledge, and they are doing whatever they can do to get that across to the political mainstream. However, we need more partners to join our coalition to share that knowledge, and we also need journalists who could help us spread that knowledge. And now we are coming towards the end of this short panel, and not much time is left, but still we have some time left, and I would like to ask you to tell me what your address would be. If you had a chance to address someone, whom would you address and what would you tell that person? Let's start with Artur. Well, today I would address Wody Polskie, which is the Polish National Water Management Company, and I would address that company to ask it to implement a national program of renaturalizing the Polish waters, which should be as comprehensive as possible, because right now the Polish rivers are drying out, so I cannot see any alternative solutions if you want to fix the problem of water management in Poland. So okay, thank you, Artur. Jacek, voice over to you. What would be your address? Whom would you like to address, and what would be the content of that address? Well, I would say come to your senses. Hello, can you hear me? I think that we need to build bridges, and that would be my message. We need education, because right now we have like a 19th century education system in Poland, so that needs changing. We also need the consumers to change, and we need to teach people that every single person is a citizen irrespective of the color of their skin. We need to teach people that women have their rights, that animals have their rights, that rivers have their rights too. Well, I don't know whom I should address with that message. But people who are listening to us right now, and we ourselves, we all understand that we need to work together. So maybe we need to build something that has already been successful a number of times in Poland, so round tables. Even if there are people we do not agree with, we could all meet at a round table to have this discussion. And I wish us strength in that process. Cecilia, voice over to you. What would be your message, and whom would you like to address with your message? Well, my message would be as follows. I would like to address the politicians. I would like to tell them not to wait, not to waste time. They should not wait for the big party to support them. They should get united straight away, and they should be driven by the common good and not by some success stories within the party. And that's what we can see in Poland very clearly. There are politicians who are driven by their egos, and they would rather wait for years for something to change instead of reaching an agreement and doing what needs to be done right now, straight away. Thank you. And Rada Gavlik, voice over to you. What would be your message, and whom would you like to address with your message? Well, if there are terrorists, you need to take the weapons away from them. And this hydro-concrete lobby, they have the weapons, and we need to take that weapons away from them. And that, well, they keep receiving funds from the EU. So it is our concern that these recovery funds could be spent on destroying the rivers, as it happened in the past. So I would like to address the European Union to introduce criteria related to the protection of rivers and the protection of nature. So if any funds are provided by the European Union, they should be spent without violating the rights of the rivers and without destroying the nature. Thank you. And Isa, last but not least, what would be your message? All these plans we are opposing, they violate the Water Framework Directive. And there's also a strategy for biodiversity of the European Union, and the European Union undertook to make sure that the EU legislation with regard to the protection of the nature is enforced in a more efficient way. And I think that would be my message to the European Union. The European Union must make sure that the EU law is enforced with regard to the protection of the nature and to nature conservation. Thank you a lot. So here we are. The second panel is over. The second panel about the rivers.
The next panel, so now we will have again a short break until 4:45. And the next panel will be the panel of the young activists who are the participants of our first GEF European Green Activist Training. So have a short break with us, and we see each other at 4:45. Thank you.